Like, share, subscribe, hit the super chat on the way in. And we are going to be speaking about Mr. FD Signifier and Ketology having this conversation um about Ketology and her stance and her political views or lack thereof or being apolitical, right? Um yeah, this was a very interesting conversation. It highlights a lot of and actually this is my first point. Um and let's do that intro again because I'm like rushing straight through the point. Um like, share, subscribe, hit the super chat. So today we ain't going in on the sisters. We're not really talking about black women as much as we're having a conversation about black people from across the diaspora. And this is a conversation I actually wanted to have for a while, especially after the bit of jousting between FD and Kidology about a month or so ago. So black people across the diaspora having different experiences, um, and how that may coincide or conflict with predominantly Black American ADOS narratives, right, on being Black, particularly in the West, right? So I'm going to be saying Black. I'm primarily speaking about ADOS FBA, um, but what we see with Kidology as if I'm not mistaken, South African born, adopted by white folks from the UK, bought to the UK, raised, in the UK, to the point where she obviously has the British accent or yeah, what we effectively call in the US a British accent. Um, so having these kind of views, pretty much the way I see Kidology as a chocolate dip white woman, and I don't mean that to insult her or to take away from her clear um um what we would call black pigmentation or darker brown pigmentation, but effectively she's a black woman. But the way I see her socially, or the best way for me to rationalize Kidology in Mr. Z's own little mind is as effectively a chocolate dip, dark chocolate dip, um, white woman, right? And I think hearing Kidology speak, you get this sense of like not being accepted, right? And which would speak to much of her being what she calls a staunch individualist, right? I call it hyper individualistic, which sounds nice on paper until you start dealing with countries with millions of inhabitants, right? Tens of millions, and like America, hundreds of millions, and like China, a billion, and like India, a billion plus people, right? India and China. That hyper individualistic stuff sounds real nice until you got to manage states and countries, right? And cities and counties, right? Until you're a mayor or a president or a governor, right? So, what I saw between Kidology and FD is the schism. And I'm not going to be able to go off on all my points because I am driving right now, so I can't switch through windows and I can't look at the points that I have. So I'm going to have to get to them when I reach my destination within the next 20 minutes, give or take. But what I saw with the back and forth between Kidology and FD is a black person who effectively was raised by white folks in the UK and has this particular worldview versus a black person born and raised in America who has a very black American worldview, right? Now, these are two black people with two different perspectives on air quotes being black, and how that what's the word I want to use here, how that comes off, right? So, and I remember this was one of the points. I'm actually skipping points to make this one. which is kidology pulled the whole, and many of us have heard this before, particularly from Black conservatives. I'm not kidology says she's apolitical, um, and I would tend to agree with her and FD that she may be apolitical, but much of what she says is somewhat left leaning. Although I think kidology is very naive to the modern right, right? The modern political right and how they move. And I think she, because she's such a staunch individualist, she misses, or she doesn't, I'm, train tracks, to not insult her. Because I don't, it's not that she misses. I think she takes for granted and she doesn't fully appreciate how her rhetoric and her just being open, and it's good to be open. There's nothing wrong with being open politically and being open to certain political views. As a matter of fact, that's what you're supposed to do, right? But what I think she's missing how she can be weaponized against Black people in the West, right? Particularly Black Americans, her particular worldview and perspective, right? And that staunch individualism puts her in the position to not understand how certain more powerful dominant groups want to maintain their power, and they would rather have people move about as individuals, the outside groups move around as individuals instead of seeing themselves as part of a group. All you're doing by pushing this hyper individualistic or being a staunch individualist, all you're doing really is allowing both the people in the dominant group and the people in the that's not part of that dominant group to think of themselves as individualists, although the dominant group still maintains all the power. They still write all the rules. So the people that's not part of that group still got to talk like them, walk like them, act like them, think like them, right? And still, even with that, still not get all of the rewards from moving that way. And when the consequences are met on you for being part of that outside group, it's always going to be as if it's only happening to you because of something you did or said or didn't do or didn't say. And it will never be said that, it's partially some of this is happening to you because of your part of that outside group, or the harshness at which this thing is being met with is because you're part of the outside group, right? So that individuality stuff sound nice on paper, but when put into practice, particularly, and Mr. Z is all the way in his lefty bag today, like bear with me for some of my moderate brothers and sisters, definitely the brothers and sisters on the right. I am all the way in the left today. I'm all the way, right? But when you have this staunchly individualistic worldview, I think you take for granted to the point where you even pretend like it's not a thing, or because kidology is not dumb, not by a long shot. I don't even think she's naive. I think she stands on what she believes on so much. It's as if to me, and I gotta use this like extreme example. I gotta be hyperbolic to paint a picture, right? It's as if telling a Jewish person in 1938, 1937, not to see themselves simply as a Jewish person. You're an individual, right? Meanwhile, we know what the Nazis are on and what's about to happen to you if it's not already happening to you, right? And to tell, you know what? Better yet, tell all Germans they're. But when what the Jews are met with, what they're met with, you still tell them, no, don't see yourself as that. That's half the problem. The problem is you're seeing yourself as a Jewish person, right? It's just because I'm trying not to insult. I actually know, not even think. I know Kidology is smarter than I am, but like the word naive is like screaming at me right now, right? because there's so many holes in her ideology. And like, I let me just say it how I need to say it. Black people are not in position. Black people in the West are not in the position to see themselves as simply individuals. That sound nice. You would have to deconstruct whatever white people are on first, and then see yourself as an individual. And they can tell you they see themselves as individuals all they want. That sound nice, but they're the people in the power position. They're the ones practicing nepotism. We already have the studies that show that black people don't practice nepotism, right? Because of the fear, the repercussions, right? So, like, I just think Kid she said some things in that conversation that I agree with, and actually I have them um, in my notes, and I'm going to get to them once I get to my destination within the next 10 or so minutes, give or take ish. Um, but yeah, so uh, I see where kidology is coming. Oh yeah, look, another point that kidology made that I really need to stress, because kidology was not accepted, and you could see this. I think this is why she's a staunch individualist, and she actually spoke to this. So she spoke directly to this, right? Which is like, you know, I wasn't black enough for the white people. I wasn't white enough for the black people. Blah blah blah. We've heard this a million times, um, particularly in Black America for some of us who cousins are from the burbs, and oh, the worst racism I ever experienced was from other black people. Yawn, 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 and yawn. And it's really difficult to not dismiss that crap when people say it, particularly black people, because if you follow them around, you'll show them, wait, that white person just insulted your intelligence. That white person just did this. This Latino person just did that, and you shrugged it off. But your cousin who made fun of you when you would go to grandma's house, that's what you stuck on, right? So whenever black people start doing that whole, the nicest people, that the people that have been the nicest to me and the people that have looked out the most for me have been non-black people, and the people that have been meanest to me and all of that have been black people, I start looking at them sideways, because I'm pretty sure I could follow you around for a couple weeks and show you, yeah, you're lying, right? So kidology brings up this in her back and forth with FD. And essentially essentially kidology is saying, I can speak to Vosh about anything. Vosh, debate bros Vosh, right? And essentially it looks like it was Destiny and Vosh that she felt some sort of kinship with. Huh. And it was black people that were telling her that she was anti-black and yada yada and et cetera, et cetera. And I find that statement interesting. I hate that I can't use the word problematic anymore, because the left has so bastardized that word and destroyed it, because the word really would be problematic, but I can't say it because other people in the left use it all the time for the smallest infractions and the smallest things. Jesus Christ. But right, for all of my more sensible left people, y'all know exactly what I'm saying. Jesus Christ. Right, but it'd be words you want to use because they fit perfectly, but other people have just destroyed the word, and they just use it for everything, and you can't use the word anymore because you're just gonna sound like them. For real. But I think this is a major issue because you're a staunch individualist. You don't see, or you don't appreciate, when you make statements like that, how that reverberates, not just in the air quotes black community, because now we say in black community, borderline multi-continent, right? Not even borderline. We're saying black community, and now we're not even just talking about the black American community. We're speaking about the black community across the West. And that's too broad of a statement to make, I know, for many of you. But we still have a shared European oppression, right? So now we're taking it, we're making it larger. We're making this context larger than just what white folks in America um, and their ancestors have done to black folks. Now we're having a larger conversation of black people on the, not so much on the continent, but black people in Germany, France, Britain, Belgium, Spain, Portugal, America, Canada. Um, we could do this all day. Brazil, all, you know what? Let's just do continents because it's so much easier. Pretty much black people in Europe, North America, South America, and the Caribbean. For the most part, that's the conversation we're having right now. Not so much black people in the Middle East or in South Asia or in Southeast Asia, not in East Asia, not the black folks in Australia, because actually there's a few black people in Australia, mainly from the continent. But we're not having that conversation, right? We're having a conversation about black people in the western part of the world, essentially. And having some sort of shared white people stepping on black people type of history. And I know for the brothers and sisters off of the continent, on the continent, or directly from the continent, first, second generation, in the West, they're thinking to themselves, well, what about us? It's slightly different, right? Because you're not in the belly of the beast, right? I would argue black Americans are really, really, really in the belly of the beast, and then black people in the West are in the belly of the beast, and then people on the continent still got the foot on their neck, but it's not the same. Black people in predominantly black nations, it's not exactly the same, right? If that makes any sense, right? And that's not to dismiss whatever misgivings and plights and that you're going through because of, colonialism, or the history of colonialism and kind of the fallout over the past few centuries. That's not saying that, but it is saying there's a difference between a black person stepping on you because they're being funded by a white person that lives 5,000 miles away than the white person just doing it right in your face, or the white person paying the black person to step on you right in front of your face, right? There's a difference there, and I want to make sure I give some words to that, right? And so and I'm gonna reach my destination in like all of maybe 5 or 6 minutes. So train tracks, again. Yeah. So I listening to Kidology speak, it's not a naive it's a person who may not appreciate the limits of their ideology, right? Being a staunch individualist, and where the limits are for that. So part of how Mr. Z speaks on the left, and you see how I critique the left, because what I'm speaking about when I critique the left, okay, when I say, right, and when I speak about the left having or the Democrats having a man problem, right, I'm speaking about the limits, right, of appealing to what we deem as marginalized groups, and being somewhat antagonistic and myopically antagonistic to groups that we think aren't marginalized. So man writ large, right? But what happens when you're a black man, right? And then what happens when the narrative is that because you're a black man, you may not have the foot on your neck is it's not stepping on you in the same way a black woman or a black LGBTQ woman has to deal with it. But then there's data that shows the opposite, right? So that's the limits of the left. And Mr. Z makes clear to speak about, and when I say limits, what I'm saying is like the blind spot, right? The part that you're not considering because your ideology doesn't factor that in, or your ideology has a difficult time engaging with this kind of blind spot that you have, right? What I'm saying is Kidology's ideology with this staunch individualistic way of viewing things, the blind spot is that you live on a planet that has a group of people that's the wealthiest group of people for a reason, even though they only constitute something like 10% of the world's population. There's a reason for this. And it's not just something their ancestors did 4 and 5 and 3 and 2 centuries ago. It's also what they perpetuate right now, right? And I think the blind spot, the limits of this kind of hyper individualist way of seeing things, or staunch individualist way of seeing things, is that you may not take into account what I'm describing, right? And then there's a consequence to that. A larger, now this is when we get into a larger Black diaspora consequence to Black people in the Western world who think this way and then say it, right? And this is, because once again, there's a consequence to this. And I'm reaching my destination, so give me a second. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. Let me get to a place where I can stop for a second and then kind of continue with what I was saying. Yeah. All right, let's do that. All right, here we go. Right. So give me a second, y'all. Let me look at these notes, because I had things, because it was a long conversation. I want to make sure that I was able to hit some points. Give me 1 second. Okay. What do we got here? Okay, so I hit the first point, so yes, so I did that. Okay, the next one was dog whistling. So I really appreciate FD Signifier giving the Allen Iverson dog whistle reference, right? So Allen Iverson was I said Allen Iverson, sorry, FD Wish. FD was gave Kidology, because it's as if Kidology is such a staunch individualist. She doesn't appreciate that you can say things and imply things and suggest things that your subscribers and the people that are listening to you take away from that something that might be dangerous or might be detrimental to a different group. So FD was telling Kidology, you're kind of like trans antagonistic, right? Antagonistic to trans people. Now, we ain't gonna go too far into that. We already have our own way of seeing this. But based off of what FD was saying, he had to. I don't know if Kidology really doesn't understand what dog whistle is, but or is if it's a we really understand it because of race in America. Black people in America really understand dog whistling, right? So FD gives a really good example of dog whistling by speaking about Allen Iverson, and how when Allen Iverson entered the game, because he wore his clothes very baggy, because he was very, very hip hop aesthetic, he didn't switch it up, he didn't do the interview voice thing, and he embraced hip hop culture, that he was labeled as a thug, and how the people that were labeling him as a thug were very explicitly engaging in dog whistle politics, because from what we knew, Allen Iverson didn't have anything about him that screamed criminal, thug, outside of the cornrows, which they stereotyped as thug-like hairstyle or behavior. And they really meant what they really meant, we knew, was like he's black and he's black and he's unapologetically black and hip hop black. And why doesn't he bow down and do this air quotes respectability thing, right? We know that's what these people meant when they were calling him thug, right? And so FD explains to Kidology, if she needed it to be explained, when we say dog whistle in America, what we mean. And what she's engaging in, based off of even the comments in her comment section for the live video, was dog whistling, and that is what her subscribers took from it. They took transphobic concepts out of what she was saying, even if that was not her intention necessarily. And so FD was telling her like, okay, but it's effectively dog whistle anti-trans, right? And it was interesting seeing this very smart woman grapple with that, right? And I want to say this also. For all the people that said, "Oh, Kidology handled this nice and she was very stoic," yes and no. I got a chance to look at the video a little bit while I was listening to it, and yeah, she had a grimace on her face. She wasn't the happiest person in the world, right? There was some like I said, she tried to stay stoic, but there were times when you could definitely see she wasn't the happiest person on the planet, right? So let's make sure that we're a little bit honest about Kidology not being you know not being happy with much of the conversation. We'll say, right? Okay, so I think the Allen Iverson thug reference um was a very good example of dog whistle politics, right? And I hope I would hope, right, that Kidology really set with that a little bit, like being careful what you, because everybody just want to spew out whatever, because this, once again, like this staunch individualist way of viewing things, you really take for granted like everything outside of you. It's almost like very solipsistic. It's like there's other things that matter outside of like this thing that you think, right? And there's consequences for things you say that reverberate, especially when you factor in group dynamics, which I think when you're hyper individualist and you feel as if you don't fit neatly into any group, there comes this time when you almost want to scorch earth everything. And that's what I see from like Kidology. It's a person that's disillusioned because once again she speaks like a white Brit, right? She comports herself like a white Brit, but she's not accepted because she's clearly black, right? And then her worldview makes her somewhat estranged from black people, including black Brits. So because she doesn't fit there now, and she said it herself, because of this dynamic that causes her to be a starch individualist. But then there's consequences to that, right? There's consequences to that, right? Another point I want to make is yeah, this is about the money too. So Kidology makes sure to tell FD the video he put out critiquing her lost her a lot of subscribers and it hit her wallet hard. She lost a lot of subscribers and it messed her money up. Now, she's more measured. Um, Brits in their subtlety, right? So she didn't come out and just say it just like that. Even though when FD replied, he said, "Damn, I ain't mean to do that. I ain't know it was gonna hit you in your pockets like that." Right? Obviously, Americans a little bit more brash, and then black men, of course. But Kidology let him know, "Hey, you mess with my money," right? So we got it. So the money part, her subscriber base went down, and the money, right, and her money, right, and FD made sure he apologized for that. He also apologized for, um, I think saying maybe she came off as a transphobe or something like that, and he made sure to say, apologize for that. And he switched it up to saying trans antagonistic, right? So that I guess that's the new phraseology for those of us that are actually maybe not anti-trans, but we poke fun or we critique harshly, right? So now they got a new phraseology for that, which is if you're not kissing trans rear end, ugh, ugh, right? If you're not kissing trans rear end, yuck, then but you're not also praising them at the same time, then I guess you're trans antagonistic, right? So that's the new phraseology, I guess, for people that's like, not trying to hold their hand and be like, yay. Yeah, okay, whatever. Um, my other point. Oh yeah, so I kind of touched on it already. So the part where Kidology pretty much said the real problem is you Negroes, right? So like I said, she spoke about how she could speak to Vosh about anything, and essentially the whole the people that were the real mean to me was other black people, and oh god, yawn, right? Y'all know, yawn, complete yawn fest, right? And it's fascinating when black people say this. Um, even if it's true, it's still fascinating to see black people say, you know, it's been white people that's looked out for me, and it's been white people that's done this, and it's been, my biggest um, detractors have been, other black people, and yeah, so screw the group and and that sounds nice. It always sounds nice. Unfortunately for you, that's not how the world works, particularly the West works. And I would like, you know, and Kenoji has done that before. She said this same type of thing before, by the way. She hasn't only said it to FD. She said, but then you're running into the wall that you're still a black woman. If you know, and from my understanding, I think Kidology has implied or suggested she's like one of the few black people in her immediate environment. And I'm like, you're running into the wall of being a black woman in this very predominantly white environment, even if they're somewhat cordial with you, and yet you still on some like hyper individualist stuff. That's once again, it sounds nice on paper, but then when you put it to practice, which you're doing right now, by the way, how does that look? Like Mr. Z isn't about bowing at the feet of this kind of Western black diaspora on everything, right? Not going along to get along on everything. But you gotta know you still perceived as black and the consequences that come from that. And I think Kidology gets it and she resents it. Not because of what black people may have or may not have done to her, or even the comments online, or even what she might have gone through personally with black people, but she resents being seen as black by white people. And that's not something black people can fix, Kidology. Black people could become staunch individualists all across the West. You know what's not going to happen? White people still going to see you as black. And the fallout from that will still be what it is now. And white folks, particularly even in Britain, in the UK, they could do all that virtue signaling, all that talking about, yeah, we're all individuals, and I don't see color, and I don't see groups, and right? And we all have our own opinion and difference of opinion, and that's the problem y'all have. They could do all of that they want. You live amongst them. Does it look like they really mean it? Huh? They're saying it to your face. Does it look like they really mean it though? See, you getting the cordial, you getting the nice, kind white folks. That's cute. I'm about to hit you with what I say to them divestors. Where's the ring? But last time I checked, Kidology was like on her celibate kick right now. So, and by the way, I don't say that to demean like her being celibate at this point, right? But yeah, let me hit on the next point. Give me a second, you guys. Give me a second. Now, this is where I agree with Kidology 150%. Um, something that Kidology said. Y'all like, share, subscribe, hit the super chat. Something that Kidology said, that I fully agree with, and I'm paraphrasing, which is like Just because I disagree with you does not mean I'm uninformed, right? Or that I either I don't know enough, or maybe you need to bring have me speak to a trans person. Just because I don't agree with you, not only doesn't mean I'm uninformed, it doesn't mean I hate you or hate your perspective. It just means I disagree. And so Kidology got said that, or she said it in different words, and I totally agree with her. There's this thing, particularly on the left. The left does this, I would argue, more than the right, which is oh, you disagree with me, let me hit you upside the head with books and lectures and all this other stuff, because clearly you're uninformed. No, they just disagree. And the left should know better, as particularly the American left should know better. That's one of the pitfalls of the American left. You keep on thinking that the political right is uninformed. No, they just want to maintain that power. They play dumb. And for those of us that are smart enough and savvy enough and great debaters, you can occasionally back a couple of them. You can back them to a wall and get them to say, yeah, I just want to maintain my position. Screw it. That's why I continue to ask y'all to watch the Ezra Klein, Ben Shapiro debate from about 4 or so years ago now. Because that's essentially what Ezra Klein was able to get Ben Shapiro to admit in so many words. He didn't say it like that. Right? So I agree with Kidology on this. Just because I disagree with you does not mean I'm uninformed. Right? And once again, the political left has this habit of doing this over and over again. This person disagrees with me, that they can't possibly know what they're talking about then. They can't know all the history. They can't know all the facts because they disagree with me. Wrong. Right? So when she said that for FD, I was like, yeah. Right? They also got into a conversation about Kidology not being accepted. And Kidology don't be getting accepted anywhere. Kidology not being kind of accepted in this kind of lefty, I guess they have a lefty group chat on Discord, and Kidology not being accepted in there. And I might be getting the particulars wrong about this, but yeah. And she felt a little hurt. You could tell she felt a little hurt. But FD made a good point. This is, air quotes, our safe space, right? This is like for lefties only. Like we've kicked people out. We've had other people leave of their own volition because they didn't kind of like what was going on. But this is our kind of coven. This is our thing over here. And you yourself said you're apolitical. So the way FD was explaining it, which I understand, I this is where we start to sound like snowflakes on the left, but okay, I get it. Which is, I want to protect the peace of the people I share community with on this political left, right? I don't want them to have to explain themselves, or I don't want them to have to engage with what they have to engage with outside of this safe space, right? I don't want you to post a comment that would seem transphobic. I don't want you and so that's why you're kind of not in this space. You yourself said you're apolitical. So if I have this lefty side where we pretty much broadly agree on the politics, and then I bring you in, and then you say something that kind of, stops the dinner party, we got an issue. And so I see where FD is coming from with that, right? Now, we have to be careful as content creators what we say. I'm putting myself in that, obviously, even though Mr. Z's channel is super tiny. We have to be careful what we say and how we engage with others, because this is forever. And I don't know how well I do reminding myself of that. I'm I have to get better at reminding myself of that every time I press the record button. But especially when you're responding to others, and I'm saying this to myself right now also. So I'm not just saying it to the people listening, to all of you, um, in particular the other subscribers who might be listening in. Um, I'm saying this to myself also. If you're responding to someone and then they respond back to you and there's some type of negative effect, you can't claim foul at that point. So what I mean by that, and if I get this, I might get the particulars of this wrong, but the way Kidology was speaking was, well, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you try to have a conversation with me? Instead, you made a video. And, you know, if you're a content creator, you're almost free game, almost, for just about anything, just about any critique. But not only that, if you make a video responding to someone or content that a person produced, and then they make a video responding back to you, the backlash is the backlash, right? The backlash is the backlash. In other words, one of our favorite divestors produce, or I produce content. One of our favorite divestors finally decides to make a little shot at me. Then I produce another video responding to them. If all hell breaks out on their side, if all the bricks fall on them, that's part of this conversation, right? So that is something that we all have to take into consideration as content creators, right? Air quote, as cultural critics, air quotes, cultural critics, right? Is the backlash of this. Now, there are unwritten rules, right? So, like, not doxing someone, right? Not putting once again the person's government out there, their real government name, and all this other stuff. So those are the unwritten rules, right? The rules of the road. But engaging with that person's content and then critiquing their content or anything they've said online, it's borderline fair game. It's a rap battle, right? You can't be Drake in the rap battle, right? Is it a world tour? Is it your girls tour? Then you got Kid Cudi for whatever situation, disease thingy he got, right? But then when Pusha starts going in on your mom and on, you know, your producer's illness, and then he goes in on your dad and his Steve Harvey suits, and then he says that you're hiding your son, you can't claim foul play at that point. Conversely, Kidology, you can't claim foul play. You're a content creator. Now, do I think it's not a good thing that you lost a lot of right, subscribers and money because of the back and forth between you and FD and him and his people pretty much calling you a transphobe? That's not a good thing, but that also is what comes with the content. And you still were somewhat unapologetic, and as you should be. Like, if you stand on it, you stand on it. And I agree with you of like not having FD back you into a corner for you to be conciliatory because you see you're hyper individualistic. It comes off. It reminds me of like what major shooting or something like that happened. And this was when Bill O'Reilly was still on Fox News, and I don't know if the manifesto that the person wrote had Bill O'Reilly's name in it, or like you could trace it back to certain talking points from the O'Reilly factor and all this other stuff. And O'Reilly just stood on it. He was like, "Shit, I'm not the one who sent him out there to do that," right? And so, like, if Kidology is gonna adopt that perspective and stand on it, then stand on it. But I agree with FD signifying this. There's repercussions for this rhetoric, and I'm saying that also as a content creator. Like for your channel, I don't think that there should be repercussions of somebody literally standing outside of your front door in real life. No, right? Or like I said, doxing you and putting you in the position in your real life to be harmed. No. But like your channel, oh yeah, that's fair game. Oh, that's fair game, right? That's fair game. You can't critique culture. You can't critique the way people show up or their sexuality or how you because you know Kidology produces her content, that's cool, but there's repercussions for like your worldview, positive or negative. And quite frankly, I kind of see where she's coming from, but there's consequences, right? And like if much of your subscriber base was on the same sex thing, then so be it, right? And I'll pause right here. Give me a second, guys. Yeah, so Kidology has a lot to, I think, to unpack here. The debate was very, very interesting. Or the conversation. I don't know how much of it was a debate. It was a conversation. It was a conversation, and it stayed above board. There was no name calling. There was no shouting. There was no um, and two fairly educated people having a conversation, and nothing wrong with it. Nothing. You, Nothing necessarily wrong with this conversation. Like I said, I think there's limits to a hyper individualist way of viewing the world, right? And y'all give me a second. Give me 1 second. The last point I'll touch on, because I gotta go in a minute, is the political Overton window, which is something that FD spoke on, and I think he did a masterful job of speaking about what the brother Pascal Robert calls essentially the 50-year counter-revolutionary movement. And FD did a great job pretty much saying a lot of the people y'all think are left are not left. America has moved so far to the right that many of the politicians, the presidents, mayors, governors y'all see as left are effectively like in any other, um, Western democracy, these people would be center right candidates. They'll be center right people. But America has moved so far to the right that we see certain politicians as left. And I agree with FD 100% on that. I agree with the brother FD signifier 100% on that. Right? Many of the politicians we see as center left in America are actually like right wing in other nations, if not even extreme right wing in other nations. And I think Americans had to get their memories jogged with Joe Biden and Donald Trump, because we forgot that there were liberal Republicans or moderate Republicans, and there were conservative Democrats over the past 30 or 40 years. We forgot that was a thing, right? So I agree with the brother FD signifier with the Overton window. Great job explaining that to kidology, right? She knows what the Overton window is. I'm not going to insult the lady's intelligence, but kind of speaking about like these politicians that people effectively think are like left leaning, and it's like that person's not left in the context of America, maybe, right? But like left, generally speaking, nah, right? Demetrius said, "Mr. Z membership incoming." The YouTube Creator app has been telling me, because I've been eligible to start a YouTube membership for the longest, right? And I haven't, because I don't think I'm that special to have y'all be members of anything. What I just give my perspective on YouTube. I don't know what I can and what can I offer exactly. Like what Mr. Z's even greater, more detailed perspectives. Subscribe to me for what, $9.99 a month? Like, no, I don't even. Yeah, I've just left that alone. I just left that alone. Shout out to you, Demetrius. That's funny, right? If that's what you were speaking to, but I don't know. Anyway, let me get out of here. Got stuff to do. You know, eyes on me. I'm just letting y'all know, eyes on me. You know, um, for those of you that you work a 9 to 5, you already know what I mean. Okay, so which is doesn't matter. I'm unionized. Um, so on that note, Mrs. Z will pause right there. Love, peace, and chicken grease. Go check out other Black Manosphere content and other non-Manosphere content, so you can understand what dog whistle means. Not saying Kidology didn't understand what dog whistle means, but you can also actually also understand the limits of your ideology, and maybe even the limits, because we know we have conservative brothers, obviously, in the Black Manosphere, but the limits of some of this hyper individualistic way of viewing the world, right? There's limits to that. And I will pause right there. Y'all have a great rest of y'all night. Mr. Z out. All right, everybody.